Hi, and welcome to Living Well, your show for information and inspiration to improve your health and wellness. My name is Karen Fabian, and I'm your host. On today's show, we're going to start out with a yoga segment. We'll be going over 10 essential yoga poses you can do. These could be poses that you can do when you're short on time and you're looking for a great way to stretch and strengthen your body. We'll be meeting local yoga teacher Jennifer Menzer, who'll be walking us through these postures. We'll then meet Mary Lee Trentanero. Mary Lee is the founder of Boston Intuitive and author of We're Still Here, The Secret World of Bunker Hill's Historical Spirits. Mary Lee offers many services, and we're going to focus with her on the idea of building intuition. This is a fascinating subject that has implications for not only how we live our lives, but how we can tap into the wisdom in our bodies to help ourselves heal. And I urge you to keep an open mind for this segment. In our Ask the Expert segment, we'll meet Dr. Rachel Pojednik, Research Fellow in Physical Medicine at Spaulding Rehab Hospital and Harvard Medical School. Rachel is a scientist that investigates the interaction between exercise, nutrition, and health. Her passion is helping people understand how to find a healthy, happy medium, which is a motto I absolutely love. And she's going to help us understand what this means. If you're watching us here in Boston on the Boston Neighborhood Network, thank you for watching. After each show, I post it on my YouTube channel, Bare Bones Yoga, so anyone can watch it from anywhere, anytime. And please share it as well. I'd like to thank our show's major sponsor, Yoga Reaches Out, which is a fantastic nonprofit that uses yoga events to raise money for children's charities. And also my friends at Zoomies Coffee in Charlestown. They're huge supporters of the show. They're at 221 Main Street. Please visit them. So let's begin with our first segment. Jennifer, come on. Jen is here. Hello.
Hello there.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Jen and I are going to go over some different yoga poses, and Jen's going to do the postures, and we're going to kind of have a little conversation so you can understand how to do each one. So the first pose we're going to do is downward facing dog.
Sounds great.
So come into down dog. So down dog is a great way to stretch, I would say, spine and hamstrings. But Jen, a lot of people come to this posture and they feel a lot of tension in their hamstrings. Is there something they can do to kind of get out of that situation?
Oh, definitely. The hamstrings are tight. I would recommend bending the knees.
Okay.
And then shifting the hips up to get a little more length through the side body. And this
Great.
will prevent the lengthening of the hamstrings, or, well, prevent the shortening of the hamstrings.
Great. So you can see as she bends her knees, she gets a little more kind of slack here so she can get a little more uplifted in the posture. Awesome. All right, so let's come up to Warrior One. Warrior One is a great way to stretch your hips. And a lot of people sometimes as they come into it, if they feel some tightness in their hips and the base of the posture is too long, that can sometimes be a problem. So do you sometimes suggest people bring their feet closer together?
I do. I give a few different cues. One is walking right foot to right, left foot to left.
Okay.
Option 2 is walking the back heel in.
Yeah,
and
a
then
little
if they
closer.
choose, back heel lifts.
Yeah. That's a great one. You know, lifting the back heel does release a lot of tension. If you have really tight hips, this can be hard because both feet are flat.
Most definitely.
Okay, awesome. So what about twisting crescent lunge? If we kind of keep the back heel up and twist you to the right side over that bent knee.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that people can benefit from in terms of a twisting shape? Are there different things that come up for people when they're twisting?
Oh, most definitely. Not only is twisting wonderful for the obliques and the core,
strengthening.
stabilization, balance, but we know that it also helps digestion to remove toxins.
Nice. Now, what could you do to make this a little more accessible for somebody? Oh, put the knee down.
Definitely knee down.
Got it.
And then also making a fist, placing hand, and then gently using this pressing moment, almost like bringing out a towel that has water in it to gently twist.
And this all in here. Okay, excellent. All right, so what about, let's come into triangle pose. Why don't left foot, so they can see. Perfect.
Exactly, we'll switch it
All
up a
right,
little bit.
so this is a nice shape from the perspective of inner thigh stretching and really a great way to stretch through the upper body, which, you know, we're hunching a lot all day, right? So this is a really nice kind of anecdote to that. Are there different ways people can do it? I mean, blocks or knee bending or what other kinds of?
Yes, so I encourage clients to place a block on the inside, big
Okay.
toe side of the foot.
Yep.
Placing hand on block.
Yep.
Another option would be creating a slight bend in the knee.
Okay.
Or walking the foot in
Okay.
a bit more.
Got it.
So that will give them a little bit more space in the hips.
Got it. Okay. What about, one of the things I was thinking about was bringing some balancing postures into play. So tree pose. How would we do that?
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
So bringing all four corners, even though there's no such thing, but planting firmly 1 foot down.
Okay.
And then from here, either coming to the inside edge of the shin, or if there's flexibility, taking the foot, placing it on the inner thigh.
Got it.
We never come onto a joint, puts too much pressure on the joint.
So not on the knee. Got
directly.
it. Not on
and
the
then
knee.
from here, haha.
Yeah. Harder on camera always,
most definitely.
right?
Find a spot, find a drizzy.
Yeah,
to
for
look
the
at.
gaze, right.
Exactly. And then
Right.
hands can come to heart center.
Yeah.
Arms up.
Nice.
You can
nice.
move
Lots
your
of
tree
different
in
things.
the wind.
Yeah. I've even done this with folks in nursing homes where they just hold on to
Gorgeous.
chairs and really get a kick out of trying to kind of challenge their sense
That's
of
a
balance.
beautiful idea.
Yeah. Okay. So what about on the ground, things on the ground? So bridge pose. We did Warrior One for a hip stretch. Bridge is another good hip stretch, yes? Okay,
Yeah,
so
bridge
how
is
would we do bridge?
wonderful. Hip flexor opening, heart opening. Coming down onto floor.
Yeah.
Gently walking the feet. It doesn't have to be completely at the gluteals, but give it a few inches, lining
Good
the heel
leverage.
up.
Good leverage.
Exactly.
Okay.
Palms placed down onto floor, press into the heels, and then gently lift hips.
So now we're getting the same stretch as we did in Warrior One in terms of hip flexors.
Exactly.
Okay. Different arm positions you can do?
Arms can stay here. They may be here to
Yeah.
lift through the thoracic spine.
Okay.
Some may
Mid-back,
choose
yep.
to bring the hands underneath the
okay.
body, tucking shoulders.
Good. Okay, great. Now, sometimes after we do this and we do some other back bends, we come into this kind of reclined, bound angle, kind of restful shape. Can you show us that Supta Baddha Konasana?
Oh,
yeah.
favorite
This is one of the favorite ones. Yeah, so this is more on the restorative side of things, correct?
Very
so,
much
some
so.
of these postures are more energetic and some are more getting you closer to the ground and all one level. And have you ever done this with blankets or kind of supports to the
Yes,
body?
yes.
So that can be really nice too.
Yeah, and blocks underneath the knees.
Just let your legs really
exactly.
drop down.
Rolled blanket underneath the neck for length or
okay.
underneath the head.
Nice.
Maybe even some sandbags resting on the
yeah,
shoulders to open the shoulders.
Gentle pressure. Okay. All right, so let's finish off with showing pigeon pose. I know for folks that are going to yoga classes, this is always a common posture that people are ending class with. And another good hip stretch. So how do we, yes, okay. So bringing the knee down, and you'll notice when Jen comes into it, one of the great things, and I think one of the things that confuses people is the knee is right in front of the hip versus the knee being way out to the side or way to the inside. So she's kind of working with that neutral alignment. And then as you're going down, could you rest your head on something when
Most
you're down
definitely. Yeah, just to note, as a cyclist, my shin is not parallel to the front of the mat.
Yeah.
Some people's will. Mine ends up coming in
Yeah.
because my hips are a bit tight.
Right.
And then from here, choosing to recline onto the forearms, resting the shoulders, resting the head.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you brought that up because I know when I'm teaching, a lot of students will ask, do I need to bring the shin all the way forward? If I don't, am I doing it wrong?
Right.
And is that a common thing that you hear from
Most
people?
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find a lot of people who sit the majority of their day for work
Right.
cannot bring their shin to the
Right.
front of the mat.
Right.
Another modification that I recently learned that I really like is I find that clients, particularly men, who aren't able to come into pigeon pose, I call it sleepy pigeon or dare I say lazy pigeon.
Yeah.
Sitting the hip down and
Oh,
then
nice.
greatly bending the knee will
Nice.
still give you the benefit of the stretch.
Okay, great, great. And on the back, is it able to be done on the back at all?
Definitely.
I just was thinking that when you were talking about sitting all day, because sometimes even those two facing the floor modifications can still be too much.
Exactly. So that same hip opening on the left side that we were creating, ankle comes over knee. And then you
yes.
can create a figure 4 pose
Yep.
here. Reclining head, and then hands come behind the thigh, or a little gentle
pressure.
on the
Okay.
knee to open the hip.
Right. So same general stretch, just different position with respect to
Precisely.
gravity. Yeah. So this is a little bit more accessible for people. Okay.
And it feels
great.
delightful.
And it feels great. Great, great, great. Okay, great. Well, come on up to standing. So
Certainly.
we've gone through the 10 postures, and just so viewers know, I've got a video on my YouTube channel, Bare Bones Yoga, that goes through these. But if they want to take classes with you, I mean, you're obviously an experienced teacher, you know a lot about yoga. Where can they see you?
If clients want to see me, I own a personal training and wellness studio in the South End called Saldari. So clients can see me one-on-one,
Okay.
especially those that are new to yoga,
Yeah.
expectant mothers, athletes, or someone that's looking to enhance their sports routine
Yep.
to open up the hips,
Yep.
shoulders.
And one-on-one attention is always great.
Most definitely.
Okay.
And then I also teach classes at Shamat Yoga on Shamat Avenue in the South End.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure.
Really informative. Thanks so much. So stay tuned. We're going to meet Mary Lee Trentanero next.
Congrats on paying off all those student loans.
Finally, right?
I'm kind of living paycheck to paycheck right now.
Well, have you tried saving?
Bill collectors, they're the worst. Am I right?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
Hi, and welcome back. On today's show, our next segment is our medical mindfulness segment with Mary Lee Trentanero. I like to share these segments as ways to share alternate methods of treatment, both in hospital and clinical settings, and things you can do on your own. Mary Lee is an intuitive who has conducted thousands of readings over the past 20 years. She is a certified Reiki healer and a master teacher. She has graduated from the Advanced Energy Healing Program and has studied under Dr. Mona Lisa Schultz and Dr. Brian Weiss. Thanks for joining us, Mary Lee.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to have you on because I know in my own studies as a yoga teacher, this concept of intuition, and specifically medical intuition, is really interesting to me, and things that have come up in readings that I've done. And I know there's a lot of different things that you do, not the least of which is you just released your first book.
Yes.
Called We're Still Here, The Secret World of Bunker Hill's Historical Spirits.
Yes.
And I'd like to hone in, though, on discussing this idea of intuition because it's such an interesting concept. So can you give us just a basic definition of what is intuition?
Sure. So intuition is, it's an immediate knowing. So it's like you skip over all the steps of deductive reasoning.
Okay.
And it can be a flash of insight.
Okay.
Most people think of it as a hunch. A hunch.
A hunch. Okay.
An instinct, gut instinct.
Gut instinct.
Yeah,
Okay.
and most people have had an experience where they had a hunch and they followed it, and it made their life easier in some way.
So kind of a full loop, a full circle.
Yes.
Confirming that your hunch was correct.
Yes.
Okay. Are there things that people can do to develop this skill? Is it something you're born with or not born with, or can you cultivate it?
It is, I believe it's something that everybody's born with.
Okay.
And there are a couple of ways that you can that are excellent for increasing your intuition. One is meditation. And I think probably why you have such an interest in intuition is because you're a yoga teacher.
Right.
And that's so close to
Right.
meditation
Absolutely.
and often is a form of meditation. Then journaling. So what you do is you journal like whatever intuition you have. So it might be a
Okay.
picture, it might be
Sure.
a phrase, and
dream?
or a
Dreams?
dream,
Okay.
a feeling. And if you write it in a journal, then you have it documented.
Okay.
You don't always know when you immediately get that insight what it means.
Right.
It usually is when you encounter it later in the day
Sure.
or in the week or
Sure.
something like that. But then you go back to your journal and
Right.
it's like validation. Oh, that's what that meant.
Got it. Okay. So now that we've discussed intuition from a general perspective, let's talk about it a little bit from the medical side of things. How do you apply this idea of intuition to maybe a medical problem you're having?
So medical intuition, you can look at it as intuition,
Okay.
the same things we were just saying, quick, immediate knowing, but it applies to the physical body.
Okay.
So if you wanted to know something yourself about, there's something going on with me and
Right.
I'm not sure what it is, you can get very still and ask yourself a couple of questions. One is, now imagine yourself being in a very relaxed state.
Right.
You can't be jittery and you can't be panicky.
Right.
You know,
can't be texting and asking yourself at the same time.
right. Yeah, you
be
have
calm.
to come from like a very grounded place.
Got it.
So being very still, you can ask yourself, what do I need to know about this fill in the blank? You know,
Feeling
this-
I'm having.
Yeah.
or-
What do I need to know about this pain in my neck?
Sure.
You know, what do I need to know about this headache?
Right.
And then another question you can ask yourself is, what is my best course of action with this headache, with,
Right.
you know, this back pain?
And you're just kind of listening for kind of self thoughts or
Yes.
thoughts at yourself.
So this is, see, I had an intuition about this that I
Yeah.
should talk just a little bit about clairvoyance, clairaudience, and
Yeah.
clairsentience,
Okay.
because people don't always get intuitive information through images.
Okay.
They can get a feeling. They can also hear, like, they might hear a phrase, or
Yep.
they might. So those are the different ways people get information. You can also get it through taste.
Yep.
There's clairgustafiscence
Okay.
is taste, and clairolfactory is a smell.
Right. Got it.
Yeah, so people get information different ways.
Lots of different ways. Do you find that sometimes, I mean, I'm just thinking of some people in my life that I know who are very concrete thinkers, and I'm
Yes.
thinking they might be watching this going, I don't
Yes.
know. So let's just put it out there. Let's just speak to the skeptics out there
Okay.
and say, do you feel like there is sometimes that sense of, I don't know if this is really true?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's two types of skeptics. There's the skeptic that no matter, they're a closed-minded skeptic and
Sure.
an open-minded skeptic. So a closed-minded skeptic, no matter what you say to them, you know,
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
Right.
And they will find a logical reason around your intuition.
Got it.
The open-minded skeptic, I usually go to you certainly have had like a hunch before.
Sure.
You know, your instincts have told you, you know, take a right instead of a left, or, you know,
Or maybe
you know,
something about your health even
right.
that came to you.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it really depends on the approach the person has from the start, if they're closed-minded or open-minded as to whether or not they're going to.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, there are closed-minded skeptics, and, you know, it's just, you just beat your head against the wall
Yeah.
if you tried to. So I usually don't try to prove
Yeah.
anything to skeptics. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you have any examples, especially from the perspective of something someone was going through on a medical level or a physical level, and how these kinds of skills help them?
In my practice, it's very common for somebody to ask me about their health.
Yep.
And so I've had, now, I'm going to say this and then I have to qualify it a little
Sure.
bit, is that I had a reading with a woman who had dizziness. And so she was asking me about her health, and I went immediately to her feet. And then I also went to like some excess sugar. And I also felt there was a real sense of urgency with her to go get this checked out. Well, 2 days later, she called me, and she had that evening gone into a diabetic
Reaction of
insulin
some
reaction.
kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She had never had that before.
Wow.
She did not know that she was even diabetic.
Okay.
And so that was a instance where she was asking me about her health and asking me about a
Interesting.
symptom, and then it turned out that.
There was something wrong.
Yeah, and that she needed to do something urgently. When I am working with somebody, I'm not a doctor.
Right.
And so I always have to be very careful.
Sure.
I'm trained not to diagnose.
Sure.
So I use the diabetic example. But,
Right.
so we talk about either we go to the area in the body.
Right.
And we also would talk about, is there too much energy, too little energy in this
Interesting.
area?
It's kind of like Chinese medicine in a way, from
Yes.
an acupuncture standpoint, meridians and.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we always would say, we wouldn't steer somebody away from Western medicine.
Right.
We always talk about it as an adjunct.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
Sure.
This was so interesting. I love kind of bringing these other ways of healing to people, and I think this is certainly an interesting one.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Sure thing. Stay tuned. In our next segment, we're going to meet Dr. Rachel Pajednik.
May I please have an application? Thank you.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
Hi, and welcome back. We're now at our Ask the Expert segment, and we're here to meet Dr. Rachel Pojednik. Dr. Pojednik has her PhD in Biochemical and Molecular Nutrition and Exercise Physiology from Tufts University, and she conducts research at the Institute for Lifestyle Medicine, the Joslin Diabetes Center, and Harvard Medical School. She is also an instructor at Flywheel in Boston. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
That was a mouthful. I was trying to kind of get through
yes.
that. And there's even more that I haven't even said, but just for timing purposes, we're going to hone in on the big things. So when we talked before the show, we were talking about some of the mottos or themes that you hold close to your heart, because you have so much information on a scientific level about health and exercise. And yet you've tried to kind of pull this all together in really digestible, usable ways for people. And I wanted to just kind of read off some of the things that we talked about. I was making notes when we chatted. Let's make moderation sexy again. I love that. Let's find a happy medium in our diet and exercise. And there were more, but can you tell us a little bit about what's behind those themes?
Yeah, so I feel like we are constantly living in a world of extremes, right? Where if you're exercising, you have to be exercising all the time. And it has to be at the highest intensity. And if you're eating food, it has to be, you know, the latest, greatest, most wonderful diet. And it's you know, everything always has to have a label, and you've got to wrap your arms around it and define, you know, if it's food, it's got to be local, vegan, organic, non-GMO, gluten-free. You know, like you've got to put, and for me, you just can't live in a world like that. You can't.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
And it makes you crazy.
It makes you crazy. And it's, you know, you're just constantly second guessing yourself. You're constantly feeling like you're not doing enough. You're constantly feeling like you're doing things wrong. And that's not living life, right? And these are the things when we're talking about, so my research is in food and nutrition and exercise mostly. And when you're talking about doing these things, you want them to be an enhancement to your life, right? You want them to be the thing that makes you feel better about, you know, your health, your day, your stress level. And if we're constantly feeling like we need to be on the extremes, then that's adding a level of stress that we really don't need from those elements.
And it's too hard to keep that up for a long period of time.
Which is why, for the record, most diets fail. Because it's a diet. You can't stay on a diet for your entire life. So what I try to advocate for is making a healthy lifestyle, making that moderation, that wonderful middle ground, making that the sort of part that you can sink your teeth into and be excited about. And I'm really excited about that part.
Okay, well that's, I think, a lot easier for people to wrap their brains around. It doesn't feel so impossible at the beginning. So, you know, we also talked about some of the things that are headline grabbers, and we see these things on Facebook, we see them in the papers and local news outlets, the things that grab our attention, and you know as a scientist the research behind things. And even if you don't know about the specific research, you know how research works. And I think sometimes when we were talking about how you can kind of trick the reader. So let's just go through a couple of these things. Is sugar addictive? I know sometimes people have different posts about that. What are some thoughts that just the average American should have about that?
So I think the first thing that should be said about sugar is it's in large amounts really not good for you. So that should be said right away. As far as sugar itself being addicting, there is almost no research that show that sugar as a nutrient is addicting. But I'll give you an example of a study that came out that that people clung to and went around Facebook for a million different ways. Is there was a grad student at, I believe it was the University of Connecticut, did a project and ran 2 mice in mazes. And at the end of one maze was cocaine. And at the end of one maze was sugar. And what they tried to show was that the same parts of your brain light up for cocaine and for sugar.
Hence the addictive
Hence the addictive piece. But what they never really did was that when they ran if you go back and look at the study,
Sure.
what they did was they ran the mice in a maze and it picked the sugar every time over saline.
Right.
And then they ran the mouse again and it picked cocaine every time again over saline.
Okay.
But what they never did was run the mouse and let them choose between cocaine and sugar. Exactly.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to compare.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so when you dig into the research, and the headlines were, came out that said Oreos are addictive or whatever the headline was. And it may be true, and there is such thing as food addiction.
Sure.
And behavior is critical to food choices and choosing healthy foods.
Right.
But as far as sugar itself being addictive,
right, on a chemical level
it's as addictive as any other nutrient, fat or protein.
Got it.
Yeah.
What about supplements? There's a lot out there about taking supplements. Should we be doing that?
So I tend to not like supplements, mostly because I want to make sure that people are getting all of the nutrients that they need from food.
What they eat.
Right,
Got it.
exactly. And there are two caveats that I would say to that. One is if you live in the Northeast in the winter, you should have a D supplement. And the reason for that is it's actually quite challenging to get enough D from your diet alone. But when you go out in the sun, your skin will make vitamin D. But not in the Northeast. So between November and April, the rays of sun don't hit at the right angle to break that bond, that cholesterol bond in your skin to make vitamin D.
Okay.
So you should probably take a D supplement. The other one is if you follow a vegan diet, you should take a B12 supplement.
Okay.
That one tends to not show up in blood work as low very often, but there's some pretty serious implications with brain health and aging if you're low in B12 over the lifespan.
Got it. I have some other ones, but I want to just skip ahead before we end just to make sure we get to this. One of the things that we talked about too was the connection between academic outcomes and real life. And you're doing a study with kids. Can you talk to us about that? Because this is a good illustration of that.
I'm really excited about this study. So there's this program that the Reebok Foundation funds. It's called Box Kids. It stands for Build Our Kids Success. It was started by a mom in Needham named Kathleen Tully. And she's really excited. She read this book called Spark by John Rady. Highly recommend reading that book if you haven't read it, about brain health and physical activity. And she went to a school, she lived in Needham, and said, my kids aren't getting enough physical activity during the day. They get 15 minutes of recess. They're sitting for the rest of the day, and they get physical education maybe once per week. What I want to do is I want to run the kids around in the morning before school so that when they go into school, they're ready to learn. She could care less about obesity and weight and everything else. She wanted their brains to be ready to learn. And so the Reebok Foundation came to us at the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine and said, we've been running this great program. It's in 1,200 schools now nationwide. Will you evaluate it and see if we're actually getting the benefit?
Making an impact,
right. And you know, it's funny, so we've been out there these past 2 weeks and we've been running the kids around in the morning. And if you've ever seen little kids running in the morning, so we live in Charlestown, and I live right next to the Warren Prescott School, and they have a box program that runs in the morning.
Nice.
And at 7 in the morning, you've got all these little kids running around like crazy, wild little monkeys running all over the place. And you just look at it and you think to yourself, of course they have to do this.
Right.
You know, they're built and designed to run around and be nuts. But how could we send them into school without letting them do this?
Right.
And so this is where the research comes in, is we can look at a program that's been going on and doing really beneficial, healthful things for our kids and put some numbers to it and say, yeah, we should be doing this. And, you know, in the research world and academia, you can know things sort of anecdotally, but until you put some numbers and data behind it,
It doesn't really.
that's when it becomes real.
Excellent.
Right?
Excellent.
So that's what we're working on.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. It's been so great to have you
Wonderful
on the show.
to be here.
Thank you so much. All righty. So that is our show for today. Between now and our next show, live well.